Your grocery bill. Every time you check out at the supermarket, you're reminded of how much everyday essentials cost. The price of a new car. Whether you're buying or leasing, the sticker shock is hard to ignore. The cost of building a home. For many Americans, the dream of homeownership feels more distant than ever. For years, these prices have been shaped by a trade policy that sparked global debate and divided experts, politicians, and families alike. Now, a landmark Supreme Court decision has changed everything, sending shockwaves through the economy. On August 11, 2025, the court overturned key tariffs from the Trump era, directly impacting millions of American families and businesses, from small-town shops to major corporations. This ruling forces a national re-evaluation of how the U.S. engages with the global economy and challenges long-held assumptions about trade. The story of these tariffs began as a bold assertion of presidential power, justified by national security concerns and the promise of protecting American jobs. The previous administration argued that reliance on foreign steel and aluminum threatened U.S. defense capabilities, invoking a Cold War-era law to impose steep taxes on imports, hoping to revive domestic industries. The policy aimed to protect American industries but triggered retaliatory tariffs and economic uncertainty worldwide, straining relationships with key trading partners. Supporters saw the tariffs as a shield for U.S. manufacturing and jobs, believing they would spark a new era of American industrial strength. Opponents warned they would raise costs for consumers and businesses and strain diplomatic ties, making everyday goods more expensive for everyone. With the Supreme Court's decision, the debate enters a new phase, shifting from legal arguments to real-world consequences. The legal arguments are over, but the economic and political effects are just beginning to unfold, with markets and policymakers scrambling to adapt. We'll explore the history of these tariffs, their real-world impact, and the court's reasoning behind this pivotal decision. What does this ruling mean for U.S. trade relationships, and for you? The answer could affect your next shopping trip or job opportunity. The future of American trade policy is being redrawn, with new rules and new opportunities on the horizon. Its effects will be felt in every corner of the economy for years to come, touching workers, families, and businesses of all sizes. Let's break down what's changed and what it means for your wallet, because this turning point is about more than policy. It's about your everyday life. To understand the Supreme Court's decision, we need to revisit 2018, a year that marked a turning point in U.S. trade policy and international relations. The Trump administration invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, citing national security as the reason to impose sweeping tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. This move was unprecedented in its scope and impact. The goal was clear: protect domestic producers, and ensure the U.S. could manufacture essential defense materials without relying on foreign sources, especially during times of crisis. Historically, Section 232 was reserved for clear national defense emergencies, such as during the Cold War or other periods of heightened threat. Critics argued its use against close allies like Canada and the EU stretched the definition of national security, raising questions about the true intent behind the tariffs. The administration, however, insisted that a weakened steel industry was a direct threat to national security, justifying the tariffs as a necessary measure to protect American interests. Exemptions and ongoing negotiations created a patchwork of rules, disrupting global supply chains and causing significant volatility for businesses and consumers alike. Retaliatory tariffs soon followed. Europe targeted iconic American products while China hit U.S. agriculture, escalating tensions and deepening the divide. What began as a targeted policy quickly escalated into a multi-front trade war, with countries around the world taking sides and imposing their own countermeasures. The resulting uncertainty made long-term planning difficult for businesses worldwide, as companies struggled to adapt to rapidly changing rules and unpredictable market conditions. Section 232 became a symbol of the broader debate over protectionism versus global cooperation, sparking passionate arguments on both sides about the future of international trade. With so much at stake, the stage was set for a legal showdown that would determine the limits of presidential power in shaping U.S. trade policy. The economic impact of the Section 232 tariffs has been hotly debated. Data shows a modest boost in U.S. steel and aluminum production, but at a steep cost. For every job created in metals, about 16 were lost elsewhere, especially in industries relying on those materials. Higher costs hit manufacturers and consumers, fueling inflation and shrinking profit margins. Studies found a net loss of manufacturing jobs overall, with downstream industries suffering most. The tariffs acted as a regressive tax, hitting lower and middle-income households hardest. Most of the cost was borne by Americans, not foreign exporters. States with metal producers saw some gains, but agricultural states suffered from retaliatory tariffs. The data paints a patchwork of winners and losers, but overall, the negatives outweighed the benefits. The tariffs' broad impact reshaped the economic landscape far beyond their intended targets. The fight over Section 232 tariffs wasn't just economic, it was constitutional. The key question: did the president overstep authority granted by Congress? Lawsuits argued the administration's broad use of national security was never Congress's intent. Lower courts deferred to the executive branch, but plaintiffs persisted, insisting the president's power isn't unlimited. They argued tariffs on allies like Canada lacked a clear security link. The case reached the federal circuit, highlighting deep divisions over executive power. The Supreme Court was called to clarify the limits of presidential authority in trade. The stage was set for a landmark ruling. On August 11, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered a landmark 6-3 decision in United States v. American Institute for International Steel, a case that would have far-reaching implications for the balance of power between the branches of government. The majority ruled that the executive branch had exceeded its authority under Section 232, which allows the president to adjust imports if they threaten national security. While the law itself wasn't struck down, the court established a much stricter standard, requiring that national security must have a direct, demonstrable link to actual defense threats, not just broad economic concerns. The justices emphasized that Congress intended Section 232 to be used as a scalpel for precise and targeted action, not as a sledgehammer for sweeping economic measures. The court warned that allowing any form of economic competition to be labeled a security threat would dangerously undermine Congress's constitutional role in regulating trade and maintaining checks and balances. As a result, the ruling now requires the executive branch to seek explicit congressional approval before enacting broad economic protection measures, ensuring greater oversight and accountability. A concurring opinion further argued that targeting U.S. allies with tariffs actually undermines true national security, which depends on maintaining strong alliances and international cooperation. However, the dissent warned that this decision could limit future presidents' ability to act swiftly and decisively in times of crisis, potentially putting the nation at risk. Despite these objections, the ruling stands as a significant check on presidential power in the realm of trade, reinforcing the separation of powers. Ultimately, Congress's vital role in shaping and overseeing U.S. trade policy is reasserted, marking a new era of legislative involvement in economic security decisions. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves through the business world. For companies relying on imported steel and aluminum, the end of tariffs means lower costs and new opportunities. Sectors like construction, autos, and appliances can expect falling input prices, freeing up capital for growth and hiring. Domestic producers, however, now face tougher competition and must adapt quickly. The ruling brings clarity and predictability to supply chains, making sudden tariff shocks less likely. Businesses can plan with more confidence, investing and partnering globally without fear of abrupt policy changes. In the short term, markets will adjust. Commodity prices, shipping patterns, and forecasts will shift. While some volatility is expected, most U.S. businesses stand to benefit as the economy unwinds years of protectionism. The decision marks a turning point for American industry. The challenge: adapt to a more open, competitive market. The opportunity: renewed growth and stability. The ruling's impact on American workers is mixed. For those in industries using steel and aluminum, lower costs could mean job growth and security. Sectors like autos and construction, which employ far more people than metals production, may see the biggest gains. But for steel and aluminum workers, the future is less certain. Competition will intensify, and some jobs may be at risk. The decision also matters for agriculture. Farmers hit by retaliatory tariffs may regain access to key markets. For struggling rural communities, this could mean a path back to stability. The ruling highlights the challenge of supporting specific industries without harming the broader economy. Policymakers must now help workers adapt through retraining, innovation, and targeted support. The national conversation about the future of American labor and industry is just beginning. For most Americans, the biggest change will be at the checkout. Tariffs on steel and aluminum quietly raised prices on everything from cars to canned goods. Removing them should, over time, help reverse that trend. Price drops won't be instant. Manufacturers must work through old inventories first. But as cheaper materials enter the supply chain, competition should drive prices down. Big-ticket items like cars and appliances will see the most noticeable changes. Everyday goods, canned food, drinks, tools, will also get cheaper. The savings may be small per item, but add up across a household's budget. This is a welcome relief for families squeezed by rising costs. The ruling won't solve inflation overnight, but it removes a major government-imposed cost. Over time, Americans can expect their dollars to stretch further. The Supreme Court's decision ends a contentious era in U.S. trade policy. By limiting the executive's use of national security tariffs, the court reasserts Congress's constitutional authority. The ruling closes a chapter of trade wars and uncertainty, shifting the U.S. toward a more rules-based, cooperative approach. Most businesses and consumers will benefit from lower costs and renewed global engagement. For steel and aluminum industries, the challenge is to compete on a global stage. The decision recalibrates the balance of power in Washington and clarifies the limits of Section 232. Trade policy will now be debated in Congress, not decided unilaterally. As the U.S. repairs trade relationships and unwinds retaliatory measures, a new era begins. The question now, how will America define its role in the global economy going forward?